I'm Austin Holmes, host of the Dallas Housing Coalition's Housing for All webinar series, a senior development associate at Dominium, and a member of the Dallas Housing Coalition Steering Committee. It's been a long and busy summer, but we are back with a very special guest for our 50th installment of our Housing for All series sponsored by Dominium. That guest is none other than Mayor Pro Tem of the City of Austin, Vanessa Fuentes. Mayor Pro Tem Fuentes proudly represents District 2 on the Austin City Council, which includes the diverse neighborhoods of Dove Springs, Del Val, Pleasant Hill, Ditmar, Easton Park, and Goodnight Ranch. It also encompasses the Austin Bergstrom International Airport, Circuit of the Americas, and McKinney Falls State Park. Since taking office in 2021, Mayor Pro Tem Fuentes has fought for improved health and livability, affordability, creative arts, and quality of life. We thank Vanessa for her leadership and taking the time to share her lessons learned growing up and serving in Central Texas. Welcome, Vanessa. It's good to see you again after our groundbreaking in your district.
That's right. Good to see you, Austin. And thanks everyone for having me on. I'm excited to talk about housing, all things housing. We've made some good progress here in Austin. And shout out to my colleagues who serve on Dallas City Council, especially Councilmember Adam Bazaldua. Him and I go way back and have been very active in the local progress network. And so just really love everything that's going on in Dallas and excited to see what y'all do when it comes to housing.
Definitely. Yeah, there's a lot to learn from all of these cities, and we can always, take the best of each and grow and improve. So it's really exciting to have the ability to get insights from you. So to start out, maybe you could give us a little background. What inspired you to run for Austin City Council, and how has your perspective on housing specifically evolved during your time in office?
Yeah, so I was running for city council back in 2020, the first year of the pandemic. So, remember what was going on that year? There was a lot of conversation at the national level. And of course, our communities were being confronted with the pandemic. But
Definitely.
when it comes to housing, what I remember a common theme and something I would say on the campaign trail is that the last time Austin had a comprehensive update to our land development code was before I was born. And that's how long it had been since we had some comprehensive changes. And that really was to speak to kind of the political climate around the land development code in our city was one that was super restrictive and people really didn't want to see change. And, as a result of city council moving to a district form of government, and we're only 10 years into that district representation form of government, we have really seen evolution when it comes to housing. And I think that really what 2020 ushered in was a tipping point when it comes to housing prices. Rents doubled amidst the
Mm,
pandemic, increased tremendously. And because of that, we on city council felt this charge, really, this call to action that we
mm,
needed to do something big on housing. And what that looked like had to be unique to our city in that we had gone through two failed attempts of doing a comprehensive land development code update. We had been sued. The city had been sued as part of that process. And so our approach was different in that we knew that we couldn't go about it doing another attempt on a comprehensive update. So instead, we focused on smaller sets of reforms. And I think we'll talk about that here shortly.
Definitely. Yeah, the approach you guys took, pretty much housing folks across the country can attest that it has definitely worked in a variety of ways. And so, one of those things is that, Austin has adopted the reform of having three homes by right on single family lots. Austin also has single stair allowances, and minimum lot size reductions have been implemented. Can you break down what these, specific reforms do for Austin and why they're so needed?
Yeah, so these, and thank you for spotlighting three of the reforms that we did. We've certainly, in the last, 4 or 5 years in particular, we have initiated several housing related land development code update reforms
Mhm.
in our city. And I think that really speaks to us wanting to ensure that we're able to get to the mission that we see as important when it comes to addressing housing affordability, which is
Yeah.
how can we ensure that we're able to build more types of housing, different styles of housing, diversify our housing supply within our city. That was the focus and that was the objective, is how do we make it easier to build different types of housing in Austin? And one of them was the 3 by right. So taking our single family lot sizes that we have in the city and allowing homeowners to be able to develop their lot into 3 homes.
Mhm.
And this really, to give you some context here, Austin has had one of the largest lot sizes in the country. I mean, we were an outlier
Yeah.
in how big our minimum lot size standards, 5,750 square feet. And so you really could build,
Yeah.
three homes on a lot. And
Face.
um,
Yeah.
and so so that was, one of the reforms that we initiated was that 3 by right, automatically giving homeowners that ability to be able to develop either a little casita in your backyard or into multiple homes. And that is important because it allowed us to have, uh, instead of having these McMansions built on lots, which we were seeing
Yep.
in our city, we were going to have smaller types of homes that were more affordable than if it had been a McMansion style of home. And so that was one of the reforms. The single staircase reform really, gets at, is really as simple as it sounds. It
Yeah.
allows for certain type of residential buildings up to 5 stories to have just that one staircase. And the way we do buildings now are efficient. They are much more resilient to fires. And so really understanding that we want more flexibility in the different types of housing. How can we make it easier? And
Mhm.
one beautiful thing about single stair case reform that we initiated is that it allows, because these are for buildings that are up to 5 stories, it allows for more natural lighting. So these units on the floors, up to 4 units per floor,
Mhm.
will now have 2 walls with windows. So much
That's a
better
really cool
living.
piece that a lot of people haven't pointed out. I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an important thing. Austin is a green city. We pride
Mhm.
ourselves in that, and so we want to make sure that people can enjoy the natural light. And that was the other reform. And then the third reform that you mentioned was our reducing our lot size standards. So really, we did a study. The research showed us way out of sync with the rest of the country, and so we reduced that lot size from 5,750 square feet to 1,800 square feet. And there was some legislation filed at the legislature this year. I don't know where they landed on it. I can't. But to make that a statewide requirement, which was interesting to see. But for at least here in Austin, that's how restrictive and outdated our land code was. And so by changing this reform, it really well, one thing I want to mention with this is that this actually reducing our lot size standard was a recommendation from the city's anti-displacement task force. And it harkens back to kind of the way historically how land use has been used to divide communities. And so after redlining was banned, which was literally cities, including Austin in our
Mhm.
1928 city master plan, had segregated our communities of color to certain sides of town. In
Yeah.
Austin, it's on the east side. Redlining took effect where financial institutions said, okay, we you know, well, let me back up. So at redlining practice, coupled with the city then, once redlining was banned, the city then updated, we increased our minimum lot size standard up to 5,750 square feet. And that makes it challenging for families to be able to afford a mortgage when you have to go out for a loan for a lot size that huge, right? And so it's more expensive.
Okay, so
There's
it
a
was
little.
a form of doing a informal type of redlining. Well, it's like if we can't do redlining, maybe we can just do this thing that'll have a similar effect in a lot of places.
Exactly. That was just one other way where it made it difficult for families, and especially families of color, to be able to get into home ownership. And so for me, this really was about undoing a racist policy, is by making sure that we are allowing for smaller homes on smaller lots and really expanding the pathway into home ownership.
I love that you provided the historical context. I think that's so important for folks watching to learn and understand and know because I work in housing and don't know the background of some of these things, and it's so easy to just say, oh well, this is what it is. I'm sure it's in place for a good reason, and I'm sure it is vital to the survival of our community. And you go back and look at the history and sometimes learn, well, no, this was just a reaction to this happening or that happening. And so the historical context is so helpful and important. So I really appreciate you providing that. And so that kind of leads into, kind of the practicality of making the effectuating these changes and kind of my next question. So what were some of the biggest political or public challenges in advancing these reforms? And how did the council and advocates address them as you were, going through this process trying to make this happen?
Yeah, change is hard. And certainly, how you go about it matters. And as council was very focused on initiating, instead of going about it in a comprehensive land code update, we then initiated very targeted strategic reforms, all focused at simple economics of how do we increase our housing supply. And for all intents and purposes, it's been working. Our housing prices are down, our rents are down, and we certainly have seen Austin's one of the top cities for building multifamily units, for building apartment homes. And so we
Yeah.
have seen progress on that. Some of the challenges that we have faced, and this is the real talk here, is that, we heard directly from our communities, like, yes, you are increasing housing supply, but who are these homes affordable to whom? Who, like, the affordability levels are not what we see and want as affordable homes. And so that piece is when it was a challenge for us, requiring,
Huge.
for example.
Yeah.
Yes. And so what's important as you have conversations with your community is acknowledging that, how we address housing affordability is like a toolbox, right? We have different tools for different functions that serve different functions. And when it comes to housing affordability, not every single tool is all of the things. And so when it comes to building deeply affordable homes, these are homes that are targeted at 30% median family income, or I would say 50% median family income and below, but particularly 30% for our very low income families. It is important that the city continue to invest in actually building those homes and or working with affordable housing developers. And one big way to do that is through our affordable housing bonds. And so in Austin, we've been very blessed and fortunate to have a community that validates that need and has voted in support of affordable housing bonds. The last one we did was back in 2022, and that was for 350 million. And my community has been a direct beneficiary of seeing affordable housing getting built within my district as a result of those public dollars. And so it's just really important to be able to talk about all the tools that municipalities have when it comes to addressing housing affordability.
Definitely. And, as, a person working in real estate development, specifically affordable housing development myself, I can directly attest, here at Dominion, we're actively building in your district. And you were a huge help in moving that community forward. And I really think it's a testament to how y'all view housing and being able to meet with the community members and have those conversations and really explain, no, this isn't just the new housing that's only serving for folks who are moving to Austin. This is really housing that has, those deeper affordability levels that can really benefit folks. talked to people in your district who said things like, well, I had a neighbor who I loved, who was renting, who had to move really far away because the displacement that's coming with the housing price increases ha has been tough. And so we're really aiming to try to address situations like that because you want to build all sorts of types of housing, but it's definitely important to maintain the fabric of the community, and have people who have been in the community benefit from that new development. So
And
that's
that's,
huge.
you hit on a really important piece, Austin, in that, we know that there are areas of our city that have been gentrified or at risk of displacement. And so what is really important, especially with projects that are city-led or the city has a significant role either through low interest loans or grants that are provided or through our tax credits that the city might issue, is through the right to return policy. This is a policy that we have in place so that people who have been displaced, who have historical ties to that neighborhood, once that development is built out, that they are able to have preference in getting back into their neighborhood. And so it's a preference policy, and it's an important one. And I think that's another way in which we can really help mitigate displacement and bring people back.
Oh, definitely. I think that's huge and an amazing thing to do. I wonder too. I mean, you can go at it from, I'm kind of in the housing boat and looking at it from the housing side, but also folks who, are interested in just the city of Austin and its economic development, and its growth and its continued growth. It's no secret that there have been a lot of big companies, relocating and moving their headquarters to the Austin area and whatnot. I wonder if, those sorts of arguments held up there too, because a lot of the reasons for moving, your company from wherever to Austin has been, well, it's more cost effective, and our all of our employees are going to be able to afford something a little bit more. But if the housing affordability goes like this, then that competitive advantage kind of goes away. So I wonder if you guys use that in your public outreach to maybe talk to folks who are less housing focused and more economic development focused to say, hey, look, if you want to keep that economic development rolling, you really are going to need to have an affordable place to live because that's a very attractive feature of the relocations that we've seen in the past few years.
Oh, yes. No, that for sure is part of the conversations we have. And I think that's why our affordable housing propositions have been so successful in our cities because they are broadly supported by employers who want to ensure that their employees have housing in the mix. And so absolutely, that is a key piece.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I think bringing all that together so people with different interests can get on the same page about what needs to be done is really key. Could you speak to maybe the public engagement or community feedback that happened along with these reforms? And is there anything you'd advise us here in Dallas to do or to take from y'all's approach to make some of these reforms happen and push pro housing legislation forward?
Yeah, if Dallas is anything like Austin, it's all about community engagement, and the community expects a high standard of engagement. And so what I thought was effective here in Austin is working hand in hand with our planning department. And so working with the city and making sure that we were able to have various points of community engagement, whether it was an in-person open house, whether it was online webinars that people could join in. Our city council members are very active. We ourselves would be sure to include things in our newsletter and have our own community events. Those are different ways in which we made sure that everyone had an opportunity to get involved. And this is, when we are building housing for everyone, for all, we want to make sure that we have diverse voices and perspectives at the table and that it's not just dominated by one faction or one interest group. So it behooves you to put a lot of effort and outreach so that you can make sure that we're engaging everyone because everyone has a vested interest in housing and should. And to me, that was really important. We also, I don't know if y'all do this in Dallas, but we've now started having joint meetings between our city council and our planning commission. So that has been really great to have like a joint public hearing. So we've gotten efficient in our way as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, those are some really great things that we can look to kind of implement a bit in Dallas, and understand how, bringing everyone to the table really helps you go a lot further.
Yes.
And so that's awesome. One other thing I wanted to touch on is that Austin has really been a leading city in ADU legislation and
Mhm.
design and reform. Can you share more about the city's efforts to make ADU development easier, such as pre-approved plans or financing assistance, and any early results or takeaways from, what you've started to implement there?
Yes, so in 2021 is where we started our ADU reform efforts. One of the things that we did, and I know we didn't mention this in the earlier piece, but was getting rid of occupancy limits. That's another way that we've had restrictions in our city, making it harder for folks to live in housing, unrelated adults. But as part of our ADU process, we started years ago, and I will tell you, it has been challenging, to say the least. Part of that initial effort at reform was we asked our city staff to take a look at how can we have pre-approved plans for our accessory dwelling units. This is understanding how your site plan and permitting process is another kind of way that housing gets slowed down and actually getting built. It adds cost, time, all of that is a hindrance into wanting to get more housing online as quickly as possible and allowing people to age in place. Um, and our city staff did the research. They came back and they didn't recommend having a set of pre-approved plans. And they said essentially that it was mixed results when they took a look at other cities. And I know Denver has a model where they have pre-approved plans for their ADUs. But in their expertise is that from what they saw in other cities is that for those cities who do have pre-approved ADU plans, the challenging piece is that two things. One, you have to find a financial institution that will work with homeowners to be able to qualify for a low interest loan to be able to build that ADU on their lot. But two, that, just to, well, a piece on that before I move to the piece, is that even if the city got involved in working with a financial institution, because we have explored that as well, that it would be really, really challenging to stand up a support program even if we dedicated $1 million to be able to provide those low interest loans to individuals to build an ADU. We were only talk about 10 to 20 households we would support with that $1 million. So very low impact and high administration costs. And they quote us at $400,000 in just admin costs to be able to help financially for homeowners. So there's a lot to work through on ADUs being helpful to families, especially low income families earning 30%, below MFI, or 50% and below. And then, the other second piece is just that the context sensitivity of each lot, having to still go through a process. And so even if you had pre-approved site plans, that there would still be an effort there to take a look at the actual parcel.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's really cool that y'all have kind of delved into the practicality and looked at the numbers, and been kind of technical about it and really understood, okay, well, how can we make the most impact and do what we need to do here? So that's really awesome. Are there any personal priorities or upcoming housing initiatives you're especially passionate about, that you'd like to see Austin pursue next? Particularly related to, affordability and equity, for historically marginalized communities.
Yes, we are, the legislature just granted cities the ability to do more homestead preservation districts in 2023. So just yesterday on city council, we took action to expand homestead preservation districts in our city to two more areas, one being in my district in Dove Springs. So I'm very excited. That's a new
Awesome.
tool for us. Yes, this is going to be a great way for us to take revenue from economic development in an underserved area and put that right back into home ownership and ensuring that we have affordable housing in those neighborhoods. So that's one area I'm very excited about. But, honestly, for me and for the area I represent, it's just about connectivity. How can we ensure that we have more grocery stores and health clinics and neighborhood parks in the area so that folks are more connected? And how do we get more employment centers throughout the city so that people are able to live closer to their jobs? And so I'm really all about creating the 15-minute city that you can get to all of those things within 15 minutes, and your method of choice, whether it is by biking, walking, or taking a car, you should be able to have those options. And that's kind of what I vision out for our city.
I love it. The 15-minute city. Yeah, no, it's so nice to work towards something like that. Because yeah, that's really where we'd all like to go. So that's really incredible. Those are really, really cool priorities, and have no doubt that y'all will continue to continue to get those going. So looking ahead, what would you say, housing success looks like for Austin in 5 to 10 years, going out a little bit? What particular metrics are you looking at to kind of measure that success?
Yeah, for me, this is, and honestly, this is a cautionary tale for Dallas, because before I got on council, the city had approved a strategic housing blueprint where it laid out goals around housing, and it said, we need to produce 135,000 more homes in our city, of which 60,000 should be affordable homes, so 80% MFI and below. And while we've made progress in that housing blueprint, um, we're not there yet. In fact, we're probably like a third of the way on trend. And that has been really challenging because when you set a goal, your community expects you to meet that goal. So you have to make sure that your goals are set and rooted, understanding the context of your land development code, of your ability to build, the market conditions. All of that is important. And so kind of the goals and metrics I'm focused on right now, and the city has made great effort overall given the constraints, is around preservation. How can we ensure that more Austinites are able to live in our city and call Austin home? And so that Homestead Preservation District is going to be an important piece. We also took action yesterday. Nod to Dallas. Y'all have a naturally occurring affordable housing fund in Dallas that we are now also creating in our city, that is really focused on having grants available to preserve affordable housing or to help developers redevelop their projects. So we're adding to our preservation toolkit, and so those are some neat things underway.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's really cool. And I'm sure they'll have a very large impact. Is there anything that we didn't discuss today that you'd like to, share with our audience or speak to as it relates to, any of these topics, housing related or otherwise?
Um, no, I mean, I think we covered it, and honestly, I would say who you elect matters. We would not The city of Austin right now has one of the most pro-housing councils ever in our city's history. And so who you have as policymakers at the decision table is absolutely key here for any type of reform. So I would say just get involved and ask where your elected stand on housing issues.
That's awesome. I mean, that's the proof's in the pudding, right? Y'all in the city of Austin, re housing prices are down, rents are down. I have, lots of friends who live there and who can attest. Yeah, my rent actually didn't go up, and it's it's a supply and demand thing. And so whenever you really increase that supply, it really helps. And the other great thing is y'all still have just this incredible growth rate. And so that to be able to have a growth rate and still weather that and absorb that and still allow prices to kind of, not go crazy on people and go down in many instances. I think that's really a testament to a housing policy that's doing what it's supposed to do and doing what its stated goal is of getting housing pricing under control. So really, commend you and really am looking, looking up to the way that y'all are doing things and think it's really amazing what y'all have accomplished so far and are excited to see the future.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Austin, for having me. Thank you to the Dallas Housing Coalition for this conversation. And if I or my team can ever be a resource, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, exactly. We definitely will not hesitate. And, I'm personally excited to see you at the grand opening of the Sage at
Yes.
Franklin Park. That's gonna be awesome. That's gonna be awesome. Provide a lot of great housing for folks. So thank you. All right. So thanks again to Mayor Pro Tem Fuentes for joining us this morning and for all you do for not just Austin, but for our state and for our country. Before we sign off today, we'd like to encourage y'all to check out the Dallas Housing Coalition's upcoming events, including our 13 upcoming Zoning 101 community talks beginning October 1 through November 12th, and our second annual Housing Summit that will be on November 21st, and our inaugural Resident Housing Summit, November 22nd. Follow our social media for more updates and to stay connected with our Housing for All webinar series. Visit our website, DallasHousingCoalition.com, to subscribe to our communications and to become a member of the coalition today. Thank you to our viewers and for turning in to our 50th Housing for All webinar, where we discuss whether Dallas is